Welcome to another episode of the Healthy Home Show podcast. Today I speak to Chloe Bullock, who's founder of Materialized Interiors and a pioneer in the sustainable interiors movement. She's been at the forefront of setting new standards in the interior design industry to protect our health and the environment through organizations such as Interior Design Declares, the BIID Committee, and B Corp. She's had a really fascinating journey in interiors and sustainability that stemmed from working with the very first body shop and helping them shape their eco-ethics and design to then becoming the first vegan designer. Seriously, Chloe has an amazing wealth of knowledge around healthier interiors and the latest science. So I really hope you enjoy the conversation. And just a warning, we take an eye-opening look at animal cruelty in interior design and how Chloe's ethics in this area are reflected in her work. I really hope you find this conversation as interesting as I did. Enjoy. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Healthy Home Show. I'm Charlie Lemmer, and today I have with me Chloe Bullock. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
I've been really excited to speak to you and ask you more questions about all the amazing work that you're doing in sustainable design and regenerative design. How are you?
Really well, thank you. Thanks so much for asking me on. You know, we have a big shared love of healthy materials and healthy building, don't we? So it's lovely to be invited. Thank you.
No, it's amazing to have you here because I've always been super impressed by all the work that you've done, and we always run into each other at all these design events, and I've never had the time really to be able to pin you down in your busy schedule to actually ask some questions about what you do, because I'm always fascinated by the different areas that you cover. Firstly, I was going to ask you if you could tell us about your journey into the world of interior design and what particularly inspired you to start Materialize Interiors in 2005.
So I've just been very, very fortunate that I kind of got into my passions early on, really. So I was really encouraged to my passion for design and kind of carrying that through art college and into degree level. Just yeah, I absolutely loved it. I didn't actually find the degree particularly easy to do. You know, it's that we're making furniture, designing furniture, and but it's challenging, and I think that sort of set me up well. You know, challenges, things that you are passionate about, you know, don't always come easy. So yeah, I absolutely loved it, and at the same time, I guess I was growing up a mile away from the first body shop. Literally growing up, you know, it came that was there from when I was 6. So we were, as a family, sort of customers very early on, and I really just got to know these campaigns and kind of seeing a retailer selling things, but also using that platform for campaigns. It kind of made me very aware of what was going on in the world. So once I'd graduated, I had sort of a bit of a bumpy start. I had a great job in a furniture company, but it was in a drawing office designing furniture. But the recession, you know, the early 90s recession came along and sort of got bumped away from that. And so in desperation, I wrote to Anita Roddick. I literally wrote a handwritten letter to her saying, you know, I'm here in Brighton. Brighton then was, you know, very insurance and obviously sort of tourism. There wasn't this big sort of tech. There's a big gaming kind of thing going on in Brighton now. There's a lot here. It's changed a lot, but then it was quite limited for this new graduate to find work in furniture. So I kind of thought, well, you know, they've got store interiors. Let's see if I can get in there. And by some amazing good fortune, I was invited to go and work there for a while, and then that turned into a job. And so yes, I kind of came in through design to furniture to interiors through shop retail design way in, actually.
I imagine in those days, actually, because I studied interior design myself, but even in my studies, which was a bit later, there wasn't really so much about sustainability in our design studies then. So how have you managed to integrate? Did you always have sustainability principles? And and how do you integrate those principles in the work that you do now, and what challenges have you kind of faced along the way as resistance against that? I mean, I suppose you're lucky that you kind of went to work with a Body Shop who were kind of pioneering in sustainability and better ethics around product design. But I'm just interested to know whether
Yeah.
how much resistance you had back then, or
Well, so sort of just going back to the study part, I mean, people think sustainability is quite a new thing, but it's kind of, I one of my final degree projects was using this this board which was made from Tetra Pak, which at that time they wanted to have like a local recycling scheme for Tetra Pak to turn it into a board that could be used. I mean, that's nearly 31 years ago now, and sadly that's not something that's widespread, but I'd turned that into a beautiful stool that was for this theoretical fancy London client, Quaglino's restaurant.
wow.
And we were conscious of plastics then. I can remember designing something with recycled content plastic packaging, but the Body Shop was really when it kind of really came and made sense. So they were super careful about everything that both went into the products and the packaging, but into the spaces. So we were routinely kind of screening our suppliers both for their manufacturing processes, but also the materials they were using. And that just sort of set me up with this kind of catalogue of things I just kind of had that I would check against things routinely outside. So when I worked there for 10 years, and we kind of delivered lots of store concepts, and I just felt it was a very empowering place. We were all encouraged to continue learning, and if you leave and have a business, we felt supported, and I just felt it was a really good time to leave. So I was given some lovely projects to do by the Body Shop once I'd left, and I just set myself up, and it kind of that theory just kind of was there being applied to my projects, and then as time went on, I realised I was probably a little bit unusual doing this. So, my voice came out about it more and more, and I've kind of, I really wanted to share my learnings once I realised that I had something that other people weren't using necessarily. So, but in terms of,
I was going to say, you pioneered a lot of change in the industry, because I remember studying about interior design declares, but do you think that the work that you did at the Body Shop influenced you starting that, or it's such a useful tool.
Definitely.
Can you tell us a bit more about interior design declares, because I think it's a really useful tool for everyone.
Oh yeah, I'd love everyone to know it's there. So just the little bit background on that is that for 11 years I've been a member of the BIID, the British Institute of Interior Design. And with all of these things, the more you get involved with them, the more you get out of them. And so they were sort of moving their professional practice committee into sustainability as well. And I was invited to join the committee. And there I met Simone Suss and some other members who obviously had a passion for sustainability. And that's when myself and Simone had the conversation, because I tried to join Architects Declares at least twice, and they kept saying, but you're an interior designer. And it's like, and if you want to set one up, and I thought, so I sort of had this conversation with Simone, who, was also keen. And then we kind of gathered some like-minded designers that we knew. So Jex Lee of Persona Abode and Absolute Project Management, and Oliver Heath, somebody missing, MCN. And we started to we got the website up and running, and we started to get people engaged, and now we have a really lovely solid steering group, and we're able to go on panel discussions, and we've been sharing some of our own learnings. So just looking at that thread from the Body Shop, I kind of had this crib sheet that I had actually put down on paper by this time of the kind of the top line things that we would look out for. And I mentioned that in the BIID committee, and that kind of turned into the Sustainable Specification Guide, which the BIID has now made available freely for everybody. And so I helped to co-write that. And then we kind of felt that we needed a screening sort of version. So through Interior Design Declares, we put together the sort of, there's a form for screening that people can then adapt to use how they want to. So, yeah, it's been kind of very useful to sort of keep the things that I've learned. And that actually, the sort of beginning of that screening form was what I put together for my B Corp application. So I kind of just wanted to make it easy for anyone else who wants to go for that. So they could then have something that they could then use to, when they're completing their application, their impact assessment.
Before I actually ask you about B Corp, your B Corp process, because I'm fascinated by B Corp. It's how I like to kind of spend my money, as I think we're so overwhelmed these days about making the best consumer choices. And I think being able to invest and put your money with B Corps who have better ethics is my way of at least knowing that I'm kind of spending my money more wisely on brands and products. Basically, they've got better ethics and products out there in the world. But I just wanted to kind of, going back to Interior Design Declares, I just wanted to describe to people exactly how it works in terms of it's basically a mechanism, isn't it, to help you choose products that are healthier and more sustainable. And does it apply to all products, or is it just certain interior design products?
So it's not particularly aligned to products as in suppliers or specific products. It's mainly for us to be a collaborative group that learns together and shares learnings and kind of works on campaigns together. So it's kind of a group of kind of intention and will for improvement in our industry. So we are designers, and we're also our supply chain, so the supply of goods and services, so that we can kind of cause some ripples, by working together rather than alone. It's that kind of strength thing. And we were, it was important that the supply chain was part of that, because we felt that we could just be talking it and not actually having any impact. But if we can now work with our supply chain, so we do have some supplier signatories, which is great, and they're really helping us with things like Future Build, and we've got a stand at Future Building.
Am I right in thinking that you did some work behind toxicity in flame retardants? Because as a landlord and also as a sustainable designer and someone who understands health in our environment well, it divides me a lot, because I know as a landlord I have to provide furniture, etc., that's flame retardant, but at the same time I know how toxic that can be for my tenants or for anyone living in these homes. So I'm really grateful for the work that you've done on that. And I think I'm right in thinking that was under Interior Design Declares.
Yes, absolutely. So that's sort of part of our campaigning. We felt that toxic chemical use is one of the most problematic elements of the sort of virgin materials that we're using. So that's kind of support. So the government were doing they were revising the laws, and there was a consultation. So everybody had an opportunity to feedback on the consultation. So, but prior to that, Delith Featherstone Dilk, I always get her name, it's a tongue twister, sorry. She's one of our steering group, and she's amazing. She's an upholsterer, so another supply chain member, and she has really been amplifying the need for this kind of to be addressed from all angles. So as somebody working with those materials on a daily basis, there's a huge concern for the impact of interior design specifications on the people working in those industries. And she's really sort of spoken out and kind of worked with the likes of Arlene Bloom in the States to kind of raise awareness, and Phaedra have been very involved as well. And yeah, these chemicals are causing more harm than good, and there's a sort of question mark over, is this the only way to solve the problem? And looking around the world at how other parts of the world have solved this, and we seem to be on the domestic furniture the only ones with this high level of toxic chemical use, flame retardant chemicals.
Yeah.
So yeah, we really wanted to sort of make this, make our industry aware of it. It's a, yeah, again, like you, it's an uncomfortable situation. We're by law bound to put these chemicals into things that we are deeply uncomfortable using. There's horrible ramifications. So
yeah,
it's been a really important time to kind of make sure everyone knew that consultation was happening. So we really helped to get lots of info on there. So
yeah,
it's now gone away to be kind of looked at again, hasn't it? And we're waiting to hear more.
Yeah, as far as I know, actually, I'm kind of following it loosely. But yeah, I'm really excited to kind of see how they get on with that because, yeah, as I say, it just makes me feel bad that I'm basically providing toxic furniture for my tenants against all my knowledge, and yeah, I don't want to be causing my kind of tenants harm, but the law says that I have to, which just seems ridiculous.
It's terrible,
But,
yeah. And
on that,
also, I was going to say it causes problems even, if we look at it from a circular economy point of view, we can't, we can't regenerate those materials because they're so toxic and, heavily laden with these chemicals. So there's just so many aspects to this that just are harmful to people and planet.
Absolutely. And when we know that there are alternatives out there, I just can't understand why it's taking so long to change legislation. But that applies to loads of different areas at the same time, which again is why I'm so interested in B Corps, as you must be. And I'm really interested to know what led you to go through the process to become a B Corp and how difficult it was for you, because I'm just really encouraging people that when they feel a bit of overwhelm over, okay, because there's so much greenwashing out there. Sometimes you think, okay, I don't know which products are better. I don't know which companies are being truthful when they say that their products are greener or more sustainable. So I think sometimes people can get so overwhelmed that they just stick to what they're doing, which isn't necessarily the healthiest and most sustainable route. So I love B Corp because I just think it's leading the way basically into promoting more ethical practices. And I just think it's an easier way. It's like a kind of certification basically for people that they can just go, oh yeah, they've done the hard work to make sure that their business is more ethical and more sustainable. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's so commendable that you've become a B Corp, but I'd love to know about the process you went through and how difficult it was, because as far as I'm aware, you were one of the first interior design companies to become a B Corp. So I guess you were kind of having to lead the way with them on that.
Yeah, and it's quite nice actually because they don't allow us to say that we're the first. It's kind of, they don't allow us to encourage us to kind of fanfare about that, which I think is good really. But it's quite interesting actually because I've been aware of it for a long time, and Body Shop have obviously become one, and they were at that time they were part of the world's largest B Corp. And I felt that my Body Shop ethical business background really kind of set me up ever so well because I was doing so much of it anyway. There was no question about not having my banking with an ethical bank, for example. As soon as I first set the business, I just went straight into it, and just how you treat other companies and paying people on time, and there was just some sort of things that you just did to be an ethical business. I was always really good at charitable donations and kind of the community side of it. I like to donate time to charities and various things. So there was lots of things already happening. And I just thought, well, I did and ah for a while because I wasn't sure, because there's so many things out there. But in the end, I just thought it's the one that my clients are most likely to recognize. Why certify for something that they have never heard of? So then I've got to tell them what it means for them to appreciate it. So B Corp, they're picking up products in the supermarket that have B Corp on them. So people are kind of really recognizing it. And the process, well, I mean, it's a hefty form. It's not a form, but it's the online filling in is pretty heavy, but it's freely available. You don't have to pay until you're ready to go for it. As a woman-owned business, you get a really lovely discount.
That's great to hear.
And so they've got an equity policy, so to sort of bump up the equity, which is very, very encouraging. And I think I went through the process of filling out the forms of a couple or 3 years ago, just to kind of get a feel for whether I was going to achieve the all-important 80 points or not. And I could see there were some areas that to do some, improve. So it's quite a good way to just give yourself a sort of a sense check before you go for it. And then I decided to go for it. And so the whole process, once I'd put the application in, was 9 months for me. Wow. Because I'm a sole practitioner. But I hear, 2 years plus for bigger companies is pretty much the norm.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, you're filling out forms that are talking about your team and your, like your big company. And I'm kind of like filling it in saying it's just me. But you do need to have sort of policies in place, even though it's only you. But that's fine. These things aren't so hard to do. So, and then once they go through the first kind of tier of checking you, they readjust you to a sole practitioner. So then, it's a bit easier with the language of the questions that they're asking from then on. But yeah, it's been great. I mean, clients are recognizing it, and it's helpful. And, we are busy, and I'm not suggesting that everything without a certification is not good. But certifications certainly do help us as designers when we're busy to find things. But but yeah, it's been great to be part of it, and I'm really keen to get more actively involved with it now. I want to get involved with the community. And
I was going to ask you actually about the community, whether there was much camaraderie because I interviewed another B Corp recently, a lady called Laura Rudeau, who's the CEO of Evolve Organic Beauty Products. And she was talking about her process going through it. And again, they were quite a small company, I think, at the time. So, and women-led.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really nice to hear your kind of stories and how the community within B Corp support each other. And it's great that it's actually lending to your business as well, because I think it is a really good and easy tool in a way for people to be able to identify companies that have done, who have put their money where their mouth is a bit more and shown how they're actually embodying more ethical and sustainable ways in their business, which is great. I've got to ask you about, you're the first vegan designer that I ever heard of. And I remember, I think I went to one of your talks at Future Build maybe 1 year, or I think you were on a panel there. And I was like, vegan design. I've never heard of that before. That's fascinating. So it says in your bio that you were the first interior designer in the UK to be vegan design certified. So I didn't know that certification even existed before. So can you talk a little bit about that, and how have you always been vegan as well, or was it something that you've changed to later on in life?
So I've been vegan for 6 years. And actually, well, you so don't need to be vegan to do this. I really want people to know that. It's just, that's just how it evolved for me. I've been sort of vegetarian, pescatarian since I was probably 17, 18, so, but this is just looking at kind of the use of animals in our industry. So, which, I can so hear it from the other side, because, I can hear people say, well, what, oh, then, because I've seen both sides of this, I'm not, but so let's rewind. So Body Shop, we were that would be known as vegan design if that had been a thing at that time when I was there in the mid-90s. So we weren't using animal products in the store fit. So we would avoid animal-based glues and paints. And so in a commercial setting, there's quite a lot of things you can avoid. It's surprising how many things have animal products in them. It's I can remember making furniture and dipping screws into tallow to help them go into the timber more easily, and that's obviously sheep wool fat. So it's kind of there's a lot of traditional things still around. So I heard about this course that Deborah Damari had put together with Peter. So it's an online course and it's kind of all based on sort of undercover Peter investigations, because, much as I didn't enjoy watching that element of it, I needed to kind of satisfy my curious mind, kind of saying, seeing it, you could really see. So there's things like undercover at the, a lot of the wool that we buy comes from Australia and New Zealand, and so they were undercover at, the mass wool kind of side of things, and sort of seeing how animals are treated, how, their tails are docked, and there's this process called mulesing, which is done in a very painful way, unnecessarily, and then how the animals are transported and, just poorly treated. Sadly, there's just some really horrible problems in that industry, the shearing industry. I mean, hear all sorts of things like the shearers are paid in drugs, and, they're not bothered about them. It's sort of peace pay. You're not paid to care for the animal. You're paid for how many you can shear.
Sure.
So it was kind of like, whoa, I wasn't expecting this, because my background is commercial. So I haven't really got involved in too many fabrics. And then, the whole issues of live plucking for down, and it's kind of another area. I mean, I've bought duck and down duvet. I've been buying those things over the years, thinking I knew about animal use and what happens, but because I hadn't sort of stopped and investigated it myself. So this process of live plucking is just grim. I hate having to talk about it. It's horrible. And also things like Angora, same thing. They call it live harvesting. So the fur is literally ripped off the live animal, and then they grow it back again, and then they do it again. Mohair, all these, and these were all materials that I just wasn't using because I was a commercial designer. So it's like such a wake up call for me. So yeah, I knew leather. I knew how much plastic is mixed in with leather, because I had experience of seeing that on, clients sort of saying they needed things replacing and showing me this delaminated leather, and I'm thinking, well, that's not very natural, is it? It's got layers of plastic in there, and this is a really bright color. This has been dyed, and and then realizing these are sort of dying parts of an animal that are actually needing to be heavily preserved in toxic chemicals in order to keep them in their useful state. So this whole wake up of kind of like, oh, these seemingly natural materials have got really horrible backstories.
Oh no, that's alarming to me, actually, because you're right. Whenever I think about the use of animals in design, I kind of think, well, leather. And that's kind of about as far as I
Yeah,
get, really. I mean, obviously, my
I
business is
know.
more from the point of view, unfortunately, of just human health within the built environment. So, yeah, it's eye-opening to me to think. I mean, it sounds so unnecessary. Why would you need to live pluck a duck or whatever? Just, I mean, is there
Well,
some bizarre reason why
I
they're actually
know.
doing that? Sorry, I know you said you didn't want to talk about it, and I've
No,
just
it's
asked you a
just,
question.
well, I mean, I, I, I mean, I think about the workers as well. What a horrible thing to have to do for your, earning a living. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I guess they need the animal to live so it can grow back and they can do it all again. A dead
Oh,
animal is only meant to deliver once.
oh.
Yeah, it's dreadful. And yeah, so I mean, I've had all of those things. I've had leather sofas. I've had all of it, and so it's like, oh, this is, yeah. I just hadn't realised. So
Well, as with our
it was
food
great
as
to have done
well,
that course.
whenever it's nothing is like provenance is never really explained to anyone. I
No,
mean, even with food these days, you ask loads of kids like, what does an aubergine look like? And nobody knows because we've lost kind of we've lost connection basically with where our food comes from, where our products come from, and yeah, I suppose nobody really would want to know the story about kind of live plucking because it's hideous. But I mean, it's
oh, I
important to know
know.
these
Well,
things
that's the
because we need
thing.
to change practices.
Yeah, absolutely. You're completely right. We don't get the ingredient labels on things, do we? And we don't get to hear. And the other thing, what I'm realizing is that where animals are mistreated, there's workers being mistreated as well. It's not good for humans either.
No,
They're working in unsafe, unpleasant. And of course, there's always going to be exceptions. This is talking about sort of the mass side
mm,
of it, but a lot of the leather comes from areas where they're sort of wading around in the chemicals, and those chemicals then go into waterways, and the waterways get
yes.
into the fish, and people are eating it. So it just has this horrible kind of community impact as well as worker.
Well, that's the
Um,
irony, isn't it? Of how, like, basically, we are so connected with nature. We are synergistic, let's say, with nature. So everything we do that harms nature basically harms us as well. And it's so
oh yeah,
short-sighted to think that it doesn't really. And it amazes me that people don't quite make that connection sometimes. How
well,
is it?
I believe that we are nature. We are nature. We are literally nature, and yeah. And so when people sort of you talk about climate crisis and biodiversity crisis, which again I believe are one and the same thing,
Mm.
the biodiversity crisis, we are so dependent on biodiversity for everything. We are literally self-harming. it,
That's a great way to put it,
it,
actually, is self-harm. Yeah. Yeah,
so
it's
it's just yeah, it's incredible that the penny hasn't dropped so much, but I
I
could sound
know.
like a complete,
I'm the same.
yeah,
I'm
it's
always
really,
like shocked how no one really seems to grasp how, yeah, anything that we do that I mean, the plastic thing for me is one of the most shocking things at the moment because even if you don't believe or don't feel that climate change is, is as, let's say, prominent, important, or whatever as people say it is, at the very least, I think we can kind of say that plastics are very, are bad for us and bad for the environment. When you see the amount of rubbish that we send abroad and the amount of pollution, basically, that, as you say, comes into our own waterways and comes into marine life. And what do? Well, we eat the fish. So, of course,
yeah,
plastic ends up in our own bodies. And that, obviously affects our endocrine system and leads to cancers and other illnesses. So, how people don't make that connection more is beyond me, and yet we're producing more and more plastic than ever before. I wrote a report the other day or something on LinkedIn that was showing how less than 9% of the recycling we do actually gets recycled at all, and it's probably even less.
yeah.
So but because there is recycling, it seems like it's an excuse to just produce more and more plastic because, oh, it's getting recycled, but it's not really. So
I know. I think there's quite a lot of things that they're there to make us feel more comfortable with our consumerism. So kind of this, I do it, I take my Tetra Pak to be recycled. But yeah, recently we've heard that isn't actually getting recycled properly, and it's becoming a huge problem, and almost like climate colonialism. We're taking the materials and then we're sending them back our problem materials, at the end of the life.
Yeah.
And people are living with this in their environment, and all of us, everything makes its way back into our bodies. All of this, whether it's burnt or in the sea or in the soil, it's all coming back into us, all of us. It isn't indiscriminate. It's coming to everybody. So
No,
yeah,
absolutely. And how would you say when you talk about regenerative design in your work, how does that differ from vegan design or sustainable design? Is there some particular principles around regenerative design that makes it regenerative?
yeah. So I mean, for me personally, they're all very intertwined in the same thing. But so for me, vegan design also means that I avoid petrochemicals. Yeah, if I see another vegan leather that somebody sends me, look at this vegan leather, and then you see that it's actually made of PVC, or I don't want that either. I don't want
Yeah.
the animal cruelty or the I don't want the planet cruelty either. So regenerative design is kind of recognizing this word sustainable, which we all use, and I think we need to carry on using because it's familiar. But sadly, it isn't enough. This less bad isn't getting us anywhere.
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely.
And this and the sort of regenerative means kind of like thriving and improved, and kind of, so with living future buildings, living building challenge buildings and living building challenge products, they are looking at it's kind of a plus version. It's kind of like, okay, so if it's a space, what was on that plot? What who was there before? What wildlife was there before? How can we
Great.
encourage that to thrive to a point where it was more than it was before? And kind of how can we make the whole design as less harmful as possible, and then sort of thinking it all the way through its life to the end, where you can say, how does this break down at the end of its life? Is it full of complex materials that won't compost, or is it easy to break up? Is it easy to then regenerate, as in go into the soil? And so it's kind of it's a big challenge. It's a big ask. And with all of this, I really believe, let's not all wait around until we can do it perfectly. Let's just do the bits we can do as soon as we can, because this isn't an easy thing to do. But yes, that's kind of regenerative design, is better than less bad, and kind of flourishing and thriving, and kind of bringing back the biodiversity that we really need to support our life.
Yeah.
And sort of looking at it in a bigger picture kind of way.
Yeah, I was just reading an article the other day actually it was looking at biomaterials in construction and interior design, because, yeah, as you say, in the real estate industry, construction is, I think it's like 40% of the pollution and the contamination in the world. So obviously the construction industry has a lot of work to do around how it's going to change its practices. But yeah, this article on biomaterials, I think they're called more, was talking about how you could use mycelium and bamboo and other kind of natural products in creating like removable walls, because I think that's half the problem sometimes, isn't it? We build like these buildings to stand the test of time, which is great, but in so doing, it means they're using kind of materials like concrete, etc., which just don't break down. And the waste that's created, I mean, you must have seen that. I haven't done fit outs personally, but when I speak to people and colleagues around the waste that's created every time they refurbish a place or every time they, kind of make renovations in a building or whatever. It's just astounding. So yeah,
Yeah.
have you seen much change in that? Have you seen much change in the way builders and developers are incorporating more sustainable practices in their work?
I mean, a really lovely example is Biome, which is
Mm.
the mycelium. Well, initially it was a mycelium equivalent to Celotex, so an insulation product that could be grown from mycelium. It sounds amazing, and it's gathering pace, and I really hope it's something we can use as an insulation material, but also it can be used decoratively as well. So they've kind of got a sort of a surface material that you can use. So it's been used for lighting and things like that.
Mm.
So these materials, yeah, it's a great way of sort of explaining regenerative as well. So hemp is something we used in the shop fit, actually, of Body Shop in the 90s. So hemp is a crop that is really, really efficient at sequestering carbon while it's being grown. And so, something I've done over the years has kind of got involved in tree planting, but we just don't have the time for a tree to get to 10 years to start sucking up carbon in an efficient way. But yet crops like hemp, and kind of done in an organic way, which doesn't cause problems for the soil health as well. So we get a crop that we can use for something. Hemp is just amazing. I mean,
Mm.
in the book I write about hemp. There's some real wonder materials. Yeah, hemp, bamboo, mycelium, just absolutely wonderful. And
Oh, yeah.
in there as well.
Sorry, no, I was going to say on that note, please tell us about your book because I've been wanting to ask you about your new book for ages.
Oh,
Yeah, can you talk about what's incorporated in the book and how it's going to help people?
oh
You
yeah,
before.
thank you. Oh, it's no problem. So the book is I was asked by Reba to write this book, and first of all, they asked me kind of, it's slightly more manually sounding, but I believe that sustainability in interior design is very subjective, and you kind of need that hook for you personally, or for your client, or for the project intention. It has many fits for people, and I could really see that happening. And I
Mm.
thought, I think the best thing I could make this book, the book that I want to read, is a book that kind of explains the many ways into sustainability, really, and demonstrates it to people. So it's really easy to understand the difference between regenerative and, so you can just see. So basically, I've structured the book so there's 11 chapters, and it's 11 approaches to sustainable interior design, and that can vary from sort of reuse. I've got, yeah, there's lots of them obviously, but there's reuse in there, there's biophilic design, there's healthy materials, there's ethical business. So kind of a client could be an ethical business, and that would be why they wanted you to do a sustainable interior for them. So I've kind of used some examples to show people and written about them. It's international, it's very international, and I've found it really exciting. I've loved doing the research. I've found people from TED Talks and social media, and I found people from really unusual places, and people have said, how did you find me? But I just really, really loved doing the research for it. Just find some really great examples. There's some in there that people may have seen and not sort of, not got into the detail of why they're so good. So I've kind of revisited some as well. Things like the
Right.
sharing economy, looking at, we don't actually need to buy everything. We can borrow it, and that as a concept, and how that can help our industry, because, that would be a great way to make some huge impact savings, So yeah, I've loved it. I've really enjoyed it. It's taken probably beginning to end, from concept to delivery, 2 years. And it's been a really lovely thing to do at this point. I've been in this career for 31 years now. So yeah, it's been a lovely time to just stop and look around. And really, I would desperately want to help my industry to improve. It's not about me, this book. It's about the 40 projects that are in there. I just really hope it will demystify all of this
I'm
for
sure
people,
it
because
will.
it
Go on. I was just going to say, I'm so excited to read it actually, because as far as I'm aware, it hasn't quite launched yet. Is it coming out really soon?
yeah, it'll be out in April. So the Reba Bookshop will have it in April, and then in May it's available everywhere. So it's not too long now.
Exciting. Brilliant. Well,
Yeah, can't wait.
I'll put a link to that when we get to the show notes, which would be great. And I'll really look forward to reading that myself. Before I let you go, I was
Oh,
going to
thank you.
ask you, um, how do you advise clients on optimizing wellness within their spaces? What's the top 5, let's say, things that you consider when people employ you and say, right, I want to redesign my interior, but I really want to do it with health in mind? What do you advise them
Yeah.
on as a top 5 tips?
So I guess the first thing would be just looking at what they want to get rid of and analysing, doing a little audit of that. And is this, do we need to start again? Can we reuse things? Are there things here that have already done their off gassing that we can sort of save some indoor air quality before, kind of, could we recover some of the more toxic things? If there's a really nice shaped sofa or something, let's get it recovered, because we know that there's a lot of the off gassing initially when a new sofa comes in, and especially with these chemicals going on, as well as all the other.
How long do you normally leave? Because
Yeah,
I always think about 6 months it takes at least if you're buying a new sofa or new items for the living room or anywhere else. Basically, I normally leave my carpets, etc., and rugs if they're new for about 6 months before I actually put them in my home. How long would you recommend leaving things for
that's.
if you
I
had to
mean,
buy
that
new?
sounds really good. If you have somewhere to do that, then that sounds brilliant. I mean, you read about it and people say sort of 2 weeks as
Oh,
well. So
okay.
it's very difficult because there's not very clear things for this. But if you have somewhere to store something, that would be perfect. And also, even if you don't have the thing to recover, maybe there's a really beautiful, high quality secondhand one for sale. Let's look at the pre-loved vintage kind of, not necessarily, it doesn't even have to be old fashioned, it could be a modern thing. It's surprising how much is in that kind of pre-loved place as well. So then again, that will have done its off gassing elsewhere.
Mhm.
And then just being super careful about what you do bring in. And kind of encouraging. I mean, just the basics from well is just the things that are like, oh, why don't we do this more? Why don't we air flush our spaces more? Why are we thinking that our indoor air quality is better than outdoor? Because it's not necessarily the case. It could be far worse. And so sort of have
Absolutely.
these air flushes
Yeah, there's simple
and
tricks, right, that don't cost anything. And you just think, and it's something
yeah,
that we grew up with. Like our grandmothers would always be coming and going, right, open the windows and open the curtains and get the light and the air in here. And it's something that we don't seem to do anymore. We're like in some kind of airtight spaces I mean, I guess it's because we've all been traumatized by the cost of fuel prices, etc., to
yes,
heat the home. But yeah, I mean, the air in exchange in a room only takes about an hour or something, and you're getting, as our air indoor is at least 5 times more toxic than outdoor. I think you're right. It's one of the most important and the cheapest things to do. What
yeah.
else? What else
And
do you encourage them to look at?
well, I mean, this is obviously, I'm coming at it from an interior design perspective, but there is things about the shell of the building,
Mm.
making, again, an indoor air thing, relative humidity, kind of, I hadn't realised the harm that kind of that could cause just by kind of mold growth, and just
Yeah.
making sure that what you've got to start with, you're not kind of covering up anything that's an issue. Let's kind of get it all sort of cleared out. And um, so PVC is something that we always avoided from the Body Shop.
Hmm.
Just such a horrible off-gassing, forever chemical that just doesn't, there's just look at I mean, look at linoleum. Traditional linoleum is such a beautiful product to use instead of a PVC, a vinyl floor. You know, vinyl, people still sort of are raving about these floors, and I know that from a longevity point of view, I've used them. I've used vinyl floors, you know, but the things like linoleum also have really long lifespans as well. And, you know, that's made of really lovely natural materials. So kind of just, it's not all about the aesthetic. Let's make design more 3-4 dimensional, you know, add another dimension onto it, you know, of healthy materials that are going to promote health of the users and the people installing, and then the people taking it away, and where does it go afterwards, kind of thinking about the whole picture of the things that you bring in.
Yeah, super
And then
important.
maximizing daylight, and I think the world building standards, I didn't take the exam, but I loved the study. And I was lucky to go on one of the early kind of 2-day courses that ran for it. And it just kind of brought together all the things like, oh, yes, of course, you know, that is this sort of acoustic comfort and all these things that have an effect on the body's systems. That they are all part of our remit as an interior designer. We can have such a positive influence on the things that we choose by knowing about these sort of harmful impacts. So, it's kind of, you have to find it quite exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it really exciting as well. And you're right. I just think traditionally it's always been about, like a nice aesthetic in interior design. But you know, it's so important to consider the health of the individual who's going to live in it, and not only the individual, but the animals as well. So yeah, I'm super excited with where we're going with the world building standard, and with the launch of their new residential certification program, which would be really good. I'm excited about that, although I think it's going to take a little while to kind of get through into single dwellings, and maybe to the extent that I'll be able to use it. But yeah, as you say, I still use all the principles basically in the work that I do. And not everyone can afford to do all the kind of certification processes for their own buildings or their own homes, but it doesn't mean that we can't apply all the same principles. So yeah, I agree. I've really
I
enjoyed
use the
my work.
principles.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure your clients appreciate what you're doing as well. You know, it's all well and good to be a talented, creative designer. It's a lovely thing to have that ability, but to really help the health side of things as well is just wonderful.
Well, I think they're making so many good strides within the workplace environment, actually. I think there's so much attention these days, well, mainly because they want to bring people back into the offices to work, and putting kind of human-centric design in place, and making sure that, environments are comfortable for work, and things like people's thermal comfort or acoustics have been thought about more. But then sometimes I feel like the residential stuff gets left behind. And I always think, well, it doesn't matter how kind of healthy your workplace is to work in, if you're living in a home that you can't sleep in because your neighbor's like super loud all night and you can't get any sleep, or your home's super toxic because the air within it is being polluted by, I don't know, 50,000 candles that you're obsessed with, then you can make workplaces as healthy as you like, but unless you're kind of paying attention to your own home as well, I think you're never gonna be as healthy as you want to be.
True.
So yeah. So go on.
I've noticed though, speaking to somebody recently about B Corp in their office environment, B Corp as an ethical business, these ripples are carrying on to the employees' home lives as well. They are applying what they learn in work, and I think that that's true of the healthy building kind of principles as well. Taking them to your home and kind of realizing, the importance of indoor air and high quality water filtering, and I think it will have ripples that are there that we might not realize, in people's home lives as well. So I think
I
that's
hope
really
so.
quite valid.
And I think the government are making some changes, not loads, but some changes to encourage people to think about health and well-being within our spaces more, which is great. And also sustainability is always, top of the bill, thinking about how we affect our planet with our construction methods, etc. So yeah, let's just hope that things speed up a bit, because it must be frustrating for you, as you've been so in the industry so long, that it takes quite a while for all these principles and more compassionate ways of design to filter down into everybody's mindset.
Actually, I mean, one of the eye-openers when I was researching the book, I was born in 1970. So the date kept popping up everywhere I looked. It was the last time that we, as a planet, nearly got to the very end of the year without overusing our resources. And since there, it's sort of gone from December, and at the moment we're in July. So we get to July, and from July we're using the resources of the planet in deficit. And then there was, the biggest loss of wildlife since 1970. There's just so many things that kept being 1970. It started to sort of feel a bit personal. I felt like, oh wow, I've really got to write this book. I've really got to try and cause change in our industry. I'm desperate to help my industry improve.
Well, I can see that it's been your purpose, and you've made such amazing changes within the industry. So I'm really grateful for, the path that you've kind of lit for everybody else, because it's an inspiration, and you've touched on so many different areas of design, and made so many roads into sustainable design that I'm super interested in reading your book. I can't wait for that to come out. And I'm just really grateful for all the work you do. Thank you.
Thanks so much for saying that, Charlie. I really do appreciate the support. I honestly don't know if I'm having any impact, but I really hope so. I'll give it a good try.
You're definitely having an impact. And I can't wait to see what happens in the future. And all the best of luck with your new book. I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic success. But I really appreciate all the time you spent with me today. Thank you. And I really, really look forward to people hearing what you have to say and hearing all about your business, because I just think it's so impressive. And I wish you all the best of luck in the future with it.
You're so kind. Thanks so much for having me on, Charlie. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, it was totally my pleasure. Thanks for listening to The Healthy Home Show. If you like what you heard, please press subscribe or follow the show. And if there's anything you'd like to know more about, or if you have any specific unhealthy home issues, I'd love to hear from you. So please send me a DM over on Instagram. You'll find me at The Healthy Home Therapist, or over on LinkedIn at Charlie Lemmer. Stay healthy, and I'll see you soon.